So my name's Hayley. I work for the Queensland Conservation Council in the role of organising coordinator. What that means is I work with volunteers and community groups and our member groups within our sort of campaigns to protect nature and act on climate. Before I go any further though, I just want to acknowledge that wherever we are on stolen land. Today, I'm joining you from the lands of the Turrbal and Yagara people, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present, as well as acknowledge traditional owners of the lands where we're all coming from today, but also in the context of what we're talking about today across Southeast Queensland. So we recognise the deep connection First Nations people have to land, sea, culture and community. So I'm just going to share my screen, but while I'm doing that, just a couple, so I don't think any of you can turn on your microphones. I think I've got that setting correct. But if you can, please keep yourself muted. And we will have time for questions at the end. So if you've got any questions as we go, please put them into the chat and then we can collect them and answer them at the end. So just in terms of tonight's webinar, so it's a bit of an update on our Forest for Everyone campaign within our Protect Beautiful Queensland project. So you're going to hear from a few different people about different perspectives in terms of protecting more of Southeast Queensland, why it's important, and what sort of opportunities are present in terms of protecting more forests. So speakers today will have Matt Frisk, QCC's outdoor community campaigner, who works quite heavily within our Protect Beautiful Queensland campaign. We'll also have Brian Warner, Kabi traditional owner and secretary of the Kabi People's Aboriginal Corporation. Teresa Cause, director of Horizon Guides, and Max Fulham, spokesperson for the Save Deongwar community campaign. So in terms of Protect Beautiful Queensland, so we've got a vision to double Queensland's protected areas and ensure our protected areas are well managed, and they might be private protected areas, Indigenous protected areas, and make sure that they're well funded and well managed. And we are an alliance of people right across the state, everyone who just loves nature, whether it be because it is your country, whether it be because you just like going out into nature, going for walks, going for bike rides, or because you love wildlife, or all of the above. And it's really working because we are really connecting to people who enjoy getting out into nature for all sorts of reasons. So as I said, we're an alliance, but we're sort of the campaign itself is led by Pew Charitable Trust and the Queensland Conservation Council. And we know that people love nature. We know that people love spending time in national parks. Queensland has a rich history of cultural heritage. We have twice as many native plants and animals compared to any other state or territory. But unfortunately, the not so good news is that Queensland actually has the least amount of protected areas compared to any other state or territory as well. So that's sort of, I guess, part of where we come from in terms of why we're doing this work. And I'll now pass over to Matt Frisk to take you through the Forest for Everyone campaign.
Thanks, Hayley. Hey, everyone. So I'm Matt. I'm the outdoor community campaigner for QCC, in charge of community outreach to get more public support for the PBQ campaign. Can I just check everyone can hear me all right?
Yep.
So I'm going to talk about the Forests for Everyone campaign, which is a more localized campaign than PBQ, situated in the southeast Queensland planning region. Before I do that, I just want to add some context to what Hayley mentioned before. Next slide, please. So first of all, why does Queensland need to be better protected? Well, apart from being the place where many of us hike, run, ride, camp, and connect with nature ourselves, Queensland's also home to an incredible 85% of Australia's mammals, 72% of Australia's bird life, and over 50% of Australia's reptiles and frogs. Additionally, there's over 14,000 native plant species here, many of which are only found in Queensland. So ultimately, all of that contributes to Queensland being the place where we find more than half of all of Australia's native species of plants and animals combined. And that's why Queensland's widely regarded as a global biodiversity hotspot. If you could switch to the next slide, please. Thank you. So, unfortunately, just the previous slide, Haley. Thank you. So unfortunately, being a biodiversity hotspot doesn't only mean that there are many unique species found nowhere else on Earth. It also means that they exist in the context of severe habitat loss. And on top of that, we've got over 1,000 species that are listed as threatened, and over 700 of those are found only in Queensland. So with deforestation and the consequential habitat loss constituting one of the most important threats to native wildlife, it's imperative that we rapidly increase the amount of protected land so we can ensure crucial habitats do remain intact. And the expansion of protected areas is seen as one of the most effective ways to fight biodiversity decline. Next slide, please. So yeah, we know that there's a huge amount of strong community support for these things, for the things that we're advocating for. 77% of Queenslanders want more national parks, 71% want to double the amount of national parks by 2030. 2/3 of Queenslanders visited a national park in the last year, and 90% agree that having more parks is important for their lifestyle. So all we have to do is to reach out to the community and give people the opportunity to take action. Thanks, yeah. So what is Forest for Everyone and where is it? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it is a localized campaign focused broadly on the Southeast Queensland regional planning area. That's the area you see there in blue. And these state forests are across the traditional homelands of the Yagara, Yugarabal, Kabi, Jinnabara, Waka Waka, Booyibara, and Dungibara peoples. And they're also home to at least 39 threatened species, including the koala, greater glider, Richmond birdwing, the wild macadamia nut, rare orchids, and rock wallabies. Next slide, please, Haley. Thank you. So some of these forests are also important habitats for the powerful owl, the long-nosed potteroo, and the black-breasted button quail, just to name a few more lovely animals. And we know this because in 2021, QCC commissioned a review of the conservation values of the state forest within the SQ planning area. And the result was that 19 state forests were recommended as high priorities for protection, which totaled nearly 70,000 hectares. So what's around 13,000 hectares have already transitioned into conservation or national parks. It's actually for up to 20,000 hectares remains in limbo. That slide is a little bit out of date now, but I'll explain that in a moment. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. Thank you. Just back one. Sorry, I think it lagged a bit. Thank you. So yeah, we launched the Forest for Everyone campaign in August 2025. That was with an evening of drinks, nibbles, and talks with some great speakers. And some of you may have attended that. but the campaign to protect these forests didn't start there. In fact, the campaign represents a continuation of over 25 years of campaigning, which involved, a wide range of campaigners and passionate members of the public giving up their time to commit to a cause they strongly believe in. So here's a bit of background. In 1999, there was a landmark SEQ forest agreement to end logging in SEQ by 2024. And there was a bit of a setback in 2013 when the NMP government announced that that agreement was no longer in place. A sort of further setback to that in a way in 2019 when the Palaszczuk government extended logging licenses north of Noosa to Gladstone to 2026. But there was also a partial recommitment to protect those state forests in the regional plan area. And then as we moved into 2021, that's when QCC commissioned the review that I talked about. And where those 19 state forests were identified as high priorities for protection. So in 2024, logging was due to officially end in the regional planning area as per the 25-year agreement. And correspondence with QCC confirmed that. And around that time, there were lots of meetings going on with department members about the conservation values of those forests and how important they are. That was also when the Miles government commenced a statewide review of native forests. So moving into 2025, in August, the draft timber plan was finally released for public comment, containing no mention of ending native forest logging in the regional planning area of SEQ. And there was some dodgy data in there suggesting that a large amount of timber used in house building was actually coming from native hardwoods, for which there was no or scant evidence. And that was seen by QCC as an attempt by the state government to justify continued native hardwood logging. So then in late August, that's when we launched our Forest for Everyone campaign and when we released the Forest for Everyone report. Next slide, please. So in September of the same year, QCC made a submission to the future timber plan and released a statement as well addressing that dodgy data. And then finally in October, with the final release of the timber plan, that dodgy data was removed. And most importantly, the Southeast Queensland forests were actually excluded from the logging area, which represented an enormous win for the campaign. Because we finally got that commitment, that public commitment to no future native forest logging. So where does that leave us? Now in April 2026, as I think I mentioned earlier, around 13,000 hectares has already been protected during the 25 years. But the very exciting news is that there's now nothing standing in the way of a further 32,000 hectares from being protected. And from talks with the department, we're confident that can happen in the next few years. So there's still work to do. Around 20,000 hectares still sits in limbo, and we need to keep pushing to make sure we get all of it protected. So to 2026 and beyond, like what's going to happen in the future, that we don't know. And that's where you come in. So here's what we're still asking for, right? We've got that commitment. We've got that commitment to no future native logging, but we still want and need those forests to be transitioned into a mix of conservation parks and national parks, shaped with all that input. And we need funding for rangers and visitor infrastructure to ensure the new parks are welcoming, safe, and enjoyable for everyone. So we know that community action works, and we're seeing the proof of that. We know we're winning when large chunks of land are getting the protection they need. And we're seeing success because we've been active for years, doing citizen science with bio blitzes, for example, getting more public support with our outreach stalls, and adding pressure with organized protests. Next slide, please. So, but here are some reasons why the PBQ campaign in particular has been successful. So to the left there, you see a picture of Nikki, our incredible Protected Areas campaign manager, handing over petition signatures to the For the Forest for Everyone campaign to the Minister for Environment and Tourism, Andrew Powell. Nikki's joined by Dom Courtney, CEO of Outdoors Queensland, Chris Thomas, CEO of the National Parks Association of Queensland, and Claire Tolcher, CEO of the Australian Trail Horse Riders Association. So we're growing in power and influence, not only because we hold relationships with decision makers, but because the campaign also welcomes allies from a wide range of backgrounds and interests, whether it's conservationists, bike riders, horse riders, bushwalkers, or bird watchers. And really that's why we have the opportunity to build such a wide base of power and community support. So let's talk about some of the ways that you can get involved with the campaign and keep the momentum going. What can you do to help us? So if you haven't already, please sign the petition. We'll put some links in the chat now for some of these things. You can also sign up to volunteer via the QCC website. Come and help out at one of our stalls to reach new people. You can also get, your local hiking club or whatever club you're involved in on board, and we can send you some email templates, for example, and support to reach out to any Queensland outdoors sector organisations you may be involved in, or that you think, could be collaborate with us on the campaign. You can even run your own outreach if you want to, again, with full support from our staff. And if you need any training, we are running some training events soon. So if you'd like to get involved in campaigning, but you're nervous and you want to feel like you know what you're talking about, which is totally fair enough. You come and join the outreach training we're running on Thursday the 30th, 6 p.m. That is going to be an in-person event. But that one's in person, but we are thinking about an online one in the future. For those of us who aren't in Brisbane. But if you are local and you're able to come along, I would highly recommend it because, we might even feed you. And then just one final slide. So these are some photos from some recent outreach events that we've done. And if you feel like getting involved, it is really fun and meaningful, and you'll be well supported. So please consider joining some of our events or signing up to the training if you're interested. And we'll put some links in the chat for you to find those elements you may be interested in. So that's it from me. I'm happy to take any questions later, and I'll pass you back to Haley.
Great, thank you so much, Matt. So now I'm going to hand over to Brian Warner, but I just need to track him down and unmute him. So I'll just stop screen sharing. And are you with us, Brian? You should be able
Can you
to.
hear me?
Yeah.
Hello. Hello, Haley. It's Brian Warner. How are you? My
Good.
apologies. I'm travelling. I'm on the move back to Brisbane. Big got to hit the federal court tomorrow. So all good.
That's all good.
Thanks for having me. So what would you like me to discuss?
So I guess give us a bit of background in terms of Kabi country and Kabi interests in Southeast Queensland State Forests.
Yeah. Oh God, sometimes you don't even know where to start, right? Because we first you got to buy a regional plan that the state look at. Do you focus on that? We got that Queensland hydro that's happening in the area. So what's going to have the most impact on country? And also, what is the biggest harm to our culture? And because when we got all this development and the happening, how do we start to look at the protection of our country? Where does it begin? And then you start looking at planning laws because we may have the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act, but it's not strong. So then we start getting into this Planning Act. So how does this apply, and how do we work with the government or work with the sector, such as the environmental groups and advocacy groups. So it'd be nice to see that some of these state forests be turned into Aboriginal protected national parks where we're responsible for some of these outcomes. But how do you begin that discussion and how do you look at those things I discussed, like the Aboriginal Culture Heritage Act, the Planning Act, how do you put them all together to make this occur? And how do you get QPWS and that department to help sign this over? Is that making sense so far? Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
that's where we're at. And so, because when we look at the alignment, and there will be a power line through some of these around these state forests, could they have an impact on? Before, yeah. Do you realise there's a Queensland Hydro power link discussions happening for that region?
yeah, thanks, Brian. And I think Nikki, our Protected Areas campaigner, has a couple of uh, prompt questions as well that she might want to jump in.
Brian, hi. I wanted to thank you for coming and also to acknowledge that I'm on your country and ask permission from your ancestors to be having this meeting. Thanks so much for being here. I wanted to let you know a lot of the people in the room from my reading probably love national
Mhm.
parks, may not know exactly how many national parks are on Gubbi Gubbi country. Um, and also just some background that you've shared with me over the years about just how many families are in the Kabi Kabi group and what that really means when you say you're from Kabi Kabi country. Well, like how many families, how many how many people are you actually talking about there? And just a bit of that sort of big picture if you have a minute.
Okay, I'll do my best. Like a couple of years ago, we won our consent determination, which says we're the people who are recognised as talk for this country. Within that consent, there was 20 apical families that were listed. So we're talking like a population or a nation growth. We're about 10,000. But yet we only have about 400 people on our membership with the corporation. Doesn't says I'm not saying that's everybody. Um, we roughly have over maybe 52 national parks within our state. That's a lot, right? But that's national parks, conservation, and yeah, them areas and reserves. But then councils have their reserves. You can see that waterways are also attached to us through native title. So it's pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah, and am I right in understanding that you have a ranger program at Kabi Kabi People's Aboriginal Corporation, and it's
Yes.
currently increased quite a bit? Could you tell us a bit about how rangers and caring for country in that way aligns with your healthy country plan for the region and your aspirations for country?
Oh, I think we need to revise it, to be honest. Everything keeps changing, keeps escalating. We need more, always need more, right? Um, so at the moment, we've got maybe about 12 rangers. They're all male, but on Saturday, we've, I'll take a step back. So we've won state funding to begin our ranger program, roughly about 12 males, all apply, no females. We've won federal government money to create a female ranger program. We have about 18 turning up on Saturday to begin that process. So we're looking at more females within the space. So hopefully you'll see a female ranger talk to you and not a male, which would be good. Uh, so sorry, I got one of my elder uncles in the car. He's a director with me. Um, so how does that look with the Healthy Country Plan? As I mentioned before, we see that there's harm to a culture, and when there's development happening, or people like to think about protecting, or how do we go about this way of healing and putting our people back on country? It's we don't want to see no harm because people don't understand actually how we face our trauma, and they just see it become a social thing. It's not just it has this thing where when you I don't know, when you're standing on the Mary River or if you're in a rainforest in Kalula Recreation Area, it's like you feel like you're at home and you feel safe. And when we're training our people, we're training them in just not intangible Aboriginal culture, but we're trying to teach them now that intangible Aboriginal culture, and start to look at our country more as holistic, and start to see that there's an interconnectedness through nature, which effectively we're nature people, right? Is that pretty good?
Yeah, gotcha. And I just wondered, Brian, I don't want to pepper you with questions, mate, but I just know how much
That's
gold
the
you've
way.
got in there, and we've spoken, it should come out over a long chat around the fire or wandering around the beach. But I just wondered if you would share a bit about the country itself, how diverse your traditional homelands are, because
Oh,
all the way from the beach right up to whereabouts
up
would.
to the mountain. Yeah. All different ecosystems, right? Or and we're quite lucky too. We're the only Aboriginal group that in Australia or around the world that belong to three different biospheres, side by side too, which a lot of people don't understand or know. That's Sunshine Coast, Noosa, and Great Sandy, and we're the only Aboriginal group that's in the whole three. So that should say a lot about our, Kabi country, shouldn't it?
Yeah, and just the amount of diversity and wisdom in your teams as well that are working to get people back on country and contribute to that healing. Is there more you can tell us about like what your aspirations might be for the
Well,
future there?
Kerry, our environmental guy, who's also become the senior Aboriginal Culture Heritage Officer, he would like to see more fire, so more of that healing country, and bringing our people to come back and put that fire through to get rid of, that environmental grass, European grass. That come and bring back more native grass. So I was living at Kenilworth where we trialled this. So on the back of the property that I was living, I lived on a 200-hectare environmental reserve, Mickey. And so we would trial the burning behind the property. So my job was to monitor it during the years, and it would show the return of native species back on the property, where up until that point they would stay away. So seeing the return of native grass, and kind of people like to see trees close together, but they were kind of spaced out, so you could see how we would throw spears through, to hit an animal, maybe not that getting carried away. But yeah, but most of our people would like that, or the return, or even on our coastline, the return of seeing an increase in loggerhead turtles. So our guys are being quite diverse from sea country onto river country, and
Thank
a
you. I can
whole
see some.
range of different areas they can work. So it's not just all re-veg. Some of it could be nature positive, like with you there? Hello,
Yes,
you
sorry, I
frozen.
think we may have cut
Frozen.
out. And
Yeah, you can still hear me.
yep, all good. Are there any questions for Brian? I can see some ferocious nodding going on, and I just want to acknowledge some people in the audience too. Hi, Dom. How you doing? Dom Courtney, Executive Officer, and I can see Claire Tolchard there as well somewhere. Steve Chumbley, some of our absolute
Sorry,
legends and allies. Did anyone?
Mickey. Sorry about that. Cut
Yeah,
out.
no worries.
Did yeah? Where did I get up to before I cut out?
No, you didn't cut out. It's all good. But carry
Yeah.
on.
Okay. So now we're looking at a range of things. So do we just focus on trying to make it just Aboriginal protected areas or Aboriginal protected national parks? How do we look at it in a scope where this becomes sustainability, that we're investing back in ourselves, like with some sort of carbon initiative? Why does that keep doing it? Yeah. So how do we look at it becoming a carbon initiative, or how do we look at some sort of reinvestment model backing, bringing back some revenue back into us to keep reinvesting back into country? Yeah, because I don't think we get down that level of trying to progress our brains and into making this more diverse. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I feel like I'm trying to fit like 10 years of hard work into 5 minutes. Uh, anything else? I don't know if she can hear me.
We can hear you, that's for sure. Yeah, thanks so much for jumping on and sharing all that. I'm not sure if you can
Yeah,
stick around, but we might have some questions a bit later if you're willing to hang around.
I'll
Um,
stick around, but
Otherwise,
I
if
hope
anyone has
that
any,
helps. Yeah,
yeah.
because some of the state forests, how do we see them grow? How do we see people visit them more? How do we,
Mm,
how do we invest more back into this and make people love nature? That's all.
yeah,
Thank you. Thanks, Ali.
exactly. Thank
I
you.
hope
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
helpful.
Um, yeah, how do we make sure people love nature and acknowledge that they are part of nature as
Yeah.
well? Cool. Well, if you're happy to, if there was any other sort of thoughts you wanted to jump in with, Brian, feel free. Otherwise, might pass over to Teresa Cause from Horizon Guides.
Probably best to hand over.
Oh, good. Are you there? Still there with us, Teresa?
Okay, I'm here.
There we go.
Wow, am I on? Am I
Yep,
going?
you're on.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Brian. Oh my goodness. That's a question that dominates my thoughts most days. How do we encourage people to love nature more? And it's something I've grappled with for a long, long time, because I feel like I was born loving nature. And I was very lucky in that, with a family who went bush up to the Kimberley and all over. So we lived a bush life. And for that, I'm, eternally grateful. So it's no surprise that I've become, in my vocation, I guess, wanting all the time to have more people love nature. So yes, I really feel like Brian hit the nail on the head quite a lot there. Standing by the Maroochy River, and my family lives up in that Kenilworth area too, and I grew up on the Sunshine Coast, and it feels familiar. But I've lived in the scenic rim out here in Boonah for 30 years, and this feels like it's under my skin as well. So I just, it's a hard one. If you look back, in time, humans have had a long association, of course, with nature. We've always depended on nature, but never in the history of time have we ever lived in such an unprecedented situation. Technologically, the number of people on our planet, how do we negotiate a way forward to protect and cocoon natural areas and still have people living a lifestyle to which that we've all become accustomed? And it's a really hard thing to grapple through. So from my point of view and what I do, with as a ecotourism guide and a nature walking guide, it's never about getting to the top of a thing. It's not about, I've done this, I've conquered this peak, and I've done this thing in 3 hours, and how long did it take you? Well, who cares? Because the message is, we're not here to conquer nature. You never, ever, ever conquer nature in that respect. Nature will always win. It's just, how do we want nature to be into the future? So yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling a little bit, I know, but it is close to my heart, and it is so frustrating when you see people go to nature and not have that connection. I worked in education for a long time, in outdoor education and taking school students. And I think that's key, having children with their families learning about nature. So how do we do that? It's no good just educating the children. We need the whole family approach, and Brian probably will relate to this very much. It's about taking your kids on country. It's about having them not be frightened to sit on the ground, and not be frightened to be in the dark, and not be frightened to be in the water, to feel that's a natural and normal thing to do.
Teresa, I have a question. You'll be alarmed to know. I have a question of you. Look, you have talked about you've shared with me your upbringing, which is quite different from this amazing, very eco-focused business where you're helping people transform their lives, or transform their attitude to nature and their place in nature, which you talk about a lot. And I just wondered if you could give us a bit of a sense of what your upbringing was like, and that contrast between what your folks did and then how you then ended up carving out this ecotourism niche for yourself.
Yep, I guess my parents were 23 when they took my brother, who was 18 months old, and me at 3, up to the Kimberley in 1967. When I look at the photographs, I think, wow, they were so brave, so courageous to take us up into that really wild country. No communications. We just had an old vehicles. We lived under a tarp. We ate damper. We ate beef just hanging on the tree. It was washed our clothes with the scrubbing brushes, and it was very, very hard and very basic living. And my mother, who's now 85, has been writing our full family story from go to woe, which is, quite exciting and a lovely legacy to have. Yes, my parents were involved in the cattle industry, and that's taken them working in that industry all the way from way up in that Avon Downs and up past Catherine and right up north, and then all the way down through the Channel Country and down into New South Wales, across Western Queensland, up into the Gulf. So, and my brother is still working in that industry and building cattle yards, and he has a very strong connection to so many places as well. So, yeah, very grateful for the upbringing that we had, because it made us pretty resourceful too. And I guess I often think, having been born in 1964, I've kind of lived some of the things that I remember. Children will never have that opportunity to remember, boiling up your sheets out the back in the copper, and having an outdoor dunny, and all those things that were from our childhood that were really about living resourcefully and close to not living beyond your means. And it's just been such a substantial and fundamental change to our whole society, and what our expectations are of how we live life. So nature is the sacrificial part of that in so many ways. So what we're all trying to do is balance that with, how do we encourage people to just pull back a little bit and live with a little bit less, or have different expectations around what's important as a human being living on our one little planet. Yeah, so that's the message I try and get across all the time. Mm-hmm.
So obviously not all nature is accessible to everyone. And I think, there's a lot of support from everyone in the crowd here for what you do. It's awesome. But Teresa, your business is unique, and I just would like you to explain to people exactly what you do.
Okay, well, it's a micro business. it's me, and I think Sally might be in there somewhere. She guides for me sometimes and is a great resource to bounce off. I got into tourism very fortunately through the Groom family from Binnaburra. And I worked for International Park Tours with the Groom family for 6 years, and that gave me a beautiful grounding in how to work with people, how to develop programs and cohesive experiences for people that are genuine, that are not just seeing this thing and ticking that box and, oh, I've been here and I've been there and I've done that. Who cares? But did you go there and did you have a meaningful conversation with a local person? Did you understand a little bit about what makes that community where you went tick? Did you have some time for serendipity, or was all of your time like a cookie cutter? So when these are things I took away when I was learning, I guess, the craft of tourism, is leaving that space for spice. Oh, hello. Leaving that space for serendipity, for those little things that make a trip magic, not just any old trip. And that's what we try and do each day. When I go walking, we pause before we begin a walk, and we just literally take a big deep breath, ask for permission, I guess, to enter the place, give thanks for being there, for being free. And often these days there's lots of girls who come on my walks, so we give thanks for being able to walk as a group of women of our own volition, with no one to say we can't do that or to control what we do, that we have that freedom. These are things that we really should not take for granted, and they're very important. So when we walk, we take our time, and I love that people who've been walking with me now for over 15 years, they just have a way of walking that's beautiful. It's about taking the breath and looking around and noticing things. And we go back time and again to the same places to chart those changes. It's not like everything has to be magic and a new place all the time. Go to the same places. Go there 10 times a year. Go and see how it's changed. Mark your own changes. These things are vital in conservation, particularly, because if you don't note changes, if your only experience of a place is when you met it today and you never come back, how will you know what the effect of humans there? So I've got a chart now over 30 years of how things have changed where I am, and 30 years is my baseline. I know plenty of people with a longer baseline, but it hurts my heart to see how some of the places just here have been impacted by large numbers of people walking without care. So, we try and do that. And this is part of the thing about having more protected areas, is that we can, if these places are accessible, and not everywhere has to be accessible, I don't think, but having places where we can spread people out, so that where I live, there's peaks. Well, they're delicate, they're fragile, they contain many important species. We don't want thousands of people on them, but thousands of people are on them. And that's really making a lot of impact and creating a lot of damage. So I think it's fantastic to have more protected areas. We're not going to have less humans in the short term. So how are we going to manage the people once we have the land?
Thank you, Teresa. And I was going to ask you that question, so are national parks important to what you do? But you just sort of already went there, which is helpful.
Well, yes, and of course they are. They are. But I also work with a lot of private property owners now, and there's some fabulous places on private land that people are very proud of and very invested in keeping beautiful and protected. So it's been lovely to work with people. And then, you're working with farmers and you're seeing what they're doing on their land, because it's too hard to demonize people and say, oh, all farmers are bad or all timber people are bad. And it's absolutely not true. So many people are powerfully invested in what they do and where they live, and want to see it protected in perpetuity. And they want they want to share that with people. Not everybody does, but it's lovely when I do get an opportunity to meet local people who are very happy to share their beautiful places.
It must be great to have those connections and to see the diversity of the landscapes too that you can when when you get to go across the fence. And a lot of people don't realize that we actually have the biggest private land protected area program in Australia. We have nature refuges on private land, and we have special wildlife reserves now, which are like, I think, better than national park status in terms of their protections. They're very, very well managed, and ferals and invasives and everything kept very under control. I guess it's just fascinating, your business model. It's also just lovely to hear from someone who has spent a lifetime connecting with nature and sharing that love with so many people. There's plenty more we can talk about, but I did notice, Dom, I wasn't going to let you off the hook. Dom Courtney from Outdoors Queensland is on the call, and we've just brought him in to say a few words. Dom came up with this idea in a sense. A couple of years ago in the 2024, we launched Protect Beautiful Queensland. And I think, one of the things that you've explained, Teresa, that has really resonated with me and it just brings me back to the vision of Protect Beautiful Queensland, is that we want a thriving landscape as far as you can see. We want connected parks and places across whatever tenure to make sure that nature thrives, to make sure that we're actually recovering the species that we're at risk of losing, to make sure that the unique ecosystems that we have here in Queensland actually persist, but also to care for that country that is incredibly important to First Nations people and that they've been caring for so long, and that is so important to everyone who's ever experienced it and wants to know that it's there for their kids and their kids. So with that, Dom, I'll just pass over to you, mate, if you want to say good day. Tell us a bit about Outdoors Queensland and why you're into PBQ.
Yeah, well, Outdoors Queensland in a nutshell, we're the peak body for outdoor activities across the state. So we do a lot of work in the outdoor recreation space. So various clubs and community organisations, adventure/nature-based tourism, wonderful people like Teresa who do so much great work in that space. The outdoor education space again, which Teresa touched on in her previous life, in that space, and also nature-based health. So people getting outdoors to use the healing powers of nature and all the support services behind it as well. So we're there to support that broader industry. And a key thing about this is actually, I think, what's been touched on by Brian so well, also by Teresa there, and also I think Matt was talking about it before, and I'm sure Maxwell. It's actually about stewardship of all these places and creating that sense of stewardship for all people, and how we can all work together to make sure these places are not just there, but that they're thriving and that people are able to thrive in those spaces and actually get out there and connect with all these wonderful landscapes that we are so fortunate to have. And it's not just luck, it's actually through generation after generation of stewardship for tens of thousands of years. And that's what we actually see out there today. And it's how do we make sure that's still there for future generations, and as Teresa said, there's only going to be more people, and we need to say to those people, righto, it's here for you, but you also have to care for it. So you've got to respect it. And I think that's a key part of all of this is saying there's places we could have so much fun and we should be able to do that. There's also places that maybe we don't need to go. We don't have to go to the top of every peak. We can walk around the mountain and look up at it and actually just marvel at it, and that's a great day out too. You don't have to, you can't conquer it, as Teresa said, but you can connect with it. So I think that's probably the core part for us.
Thanks so much for wrapping that up, Dom, and thanks so much, Teresa, for sharing your amazing experience and life just hanging out in nature and helping other people connect to it. So now going to hand over to Max Fulham. Max has been very busy running community campaigns to protect state forests in southeast Queensland, particularly Deongwar. Over to you, Max. I'll share my screen.
Oh, thanks, Hayley. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of slides or images to share, and we're going to rip through them pretty quickly. And I'm just going to talk to them, and I'll try and catch up. Hayley asked me to talk about how I got involved in the Save Forest campaign here on the sunny coast, which commenced in roughly late 2021, and it was fundamentally because of Linda DeVoe and Tina. They pretty much flagged the alarm about that the 128 hectares of ferny forest was scheduled to be logged, and it just caused outrage among the community and just galvanised everyone together. One of the things we did was we had a regular weekly roadside meeting, and this is a photo from one of those Friday afternoons. And it really showed just how much people cared about this forest, the mountain bike riders, the walkers, and the people who lived in the neighbourhood. This is a bio blitz. Linda's on the very left here in the pink, and there's a young Spetzer Hitchens just above the stop logging koala habitat, and Reese up the back there, weed specialist. But they all came together and did a bio blitz there. We had a huge amount of input from local biodiversity scientist Anne Moran and fauna survey specialist Sheena Gilman came up and did some work in the forest. We had Narelle McCarthy on board, and we also had input from the Australian Conservation Foundation when they were up at Mullaney, Chris and Wendy. And this was from a rally at the Pioneer Park, which was attended by probably around 200 people. And it was a pretty impressive turnout. But one of the things that really helped a lot was we had a fairly sympathetic state government at the time. And we also, in particular, had a really great member, Jason Hunt, who actually put his political capital on the line to argue within the Labor Party to protect Deongwar. And at the end of the day, after close to 2 years of campaigning, it actually got over the line. And that was a huge relief, There's a lot of anxiety in the community, but the roadside rally in particular really created a lot of good imagery, good social media, and newsworthy stories. And this was the day after the announcement, and everybody's pretty happy about it. But yeah, I just stumbled into the campaign really just from an email that my brother sent me. And I got in touch with Dave and Stella Wiggins initially, and they put me in touch with Linda. And it just sort of progressed from there. Next slide, please, hey. So after the Ferny Forest was actually announced as a conservation park, Linda in the white shirt and Peter Turner, who was a stoic guy to turn up to the roadside every week as well, fantastic. They both put their hands up to organise the Friends of Ferny Parks volunteer community group under Friends of Parks Queensland. And they're in there managing the mountain bike trails, doing weed control. And that's been ongoing ever since. And the numbers keep turning up, and that's a really nice story to celebrate. Yeah, it was really, really good to be involved with. It's probably one of the better things that I've been involved with in my life, I think. look back on it very fondly, and fortunately made a lot of great friends, and we all keep in touch. Yeah. But down the track, that sort of led me to think, well, can we take the Ferny Forest model and try and influence forests further away? And local people out in Deongwar were posting about the logging they were concerned about out in Deongwar State Forest. And after quite some time of thinking about it, I thought, well, maybe we should get something going. So I actually set up the Save Deongwar State Forest Facebook group and just went from there. This is a map of Deongwar in magenta. You can see it halfway between Crow's Nest and Esk, and it's the green area is actually the Southeast Regional Biodiversity Corridor. And you can see that Deongwar is a central node within that area. And groups like the Great Eastern Ranges are looking to reconnect all those habitats over time. This is photos from Scott Warner, who lives on the boundary of Deongwar State Forest. And it's got some significant waterways. Some of those waterways actually become gorges. They're called creeks, but when you get the opportunity to go in there, you start to appreciate that you can't actually walk out of them. You have to find ways in and ways out. And it's pretty special, really. And a lot of the people that live around there are very protective of it, surprisingly protective of it. I've had some images shared, but they haven't taken me there. So, and I think that's good. I think the fact that the people feel so strongly about this forest and care so deeply is just it's wonderful to see. It's actually 4,800 hectares of high elevation climate change refugia, and it's just going to be so critical in the long term because under a warming climate, the range of a lot of species is going to contract from the west. And we all know that the East Coast development is fragmenting and destroying habitat. And there's a lot to be said about the conservation values out in the Nanango electorate. There are glossy black-cockatoos around Deongwar, but I don't believe there's any successfully breeding or nesting in Deongwar in the log footprint itself. Next slide, please, Sally. So yeah, Deongwar has been the whipping boy for the logging industry for quite some time. When it was too wet to log Biawar West, they would pack up and ship up to Deongwar because it was a bit drier. So the logging has been going on there for some time, and it's really been quite devastating. So many people I've spoken to were really alarmed about it. This tree is 110 centimeters in diameter, marked to be logged. We actually adopted this as our campaign tree, I suppose you could say, because it was just so significant. And we were able to wrap a bit of media around that and just to help build awareness of this forest because it historically has had a very low visitation rate. Even the local people weren't particularly aware of it, and I'm still not so sure they actually really have much appreciation for it, particularly the Somerset Council. You know, they just don't seem to have the vision to recognise what they've got. And it was actually the 2013 council that approved the native forest logging plans with no objections. And when I read that, I was just quite dumbfounded. This is at the 7 Media News event. Some of the local beekeepers and people, Sandy Brown and Jenny from up in the Darling Downs Environment Council, and a couple of beekeepers. They've all got a vested interest in protecting all the native forest. And this is a quote from David Attenborough documentary, Oceans with David Attenborough, and I thought that was really appropriate. It's not about what we're protecting it from, it's about who and what we're protecting it for. And I think conservation, you need to have a long-term vision because we need to be thinking about beyond our lifetime, because we only think in short bits, you know. fundamentally, this campaign has really been about tree hollow, live tree hollow resources and dead stags for large gliding marsupials, large parrots, large forest owls. My observations within the logged areas is that nesting birds and koalas are reoccupying the logged areas quite well, but clearly these other species that are hollow dependent, hollow obligate, they're not successfully breeding or occupying the logged areas. This shot really typifies what the logging industry is doing. They have been taking out the commercially mature trees and leaving a bunch of young stems that clearly will be 150 years away from even getting close to making decent sized hollows for these species. And the logging operations and the code of practice in particular effectively puts a glass ceiling on forest maturity. This is just a graph. It shows with each successive number of logging rotations, the number of live trees, live hollow-bearing trees rather, decreases, dead trees increase, and obviously the total number of trees decreases too, but significantly the loss of, or the scarcity of live hollow-bearing trees is an issue. And the dead trees, a lot of those, you can lose up to 50% of dead stags in a bad bushfire. So that makes the population of hollow dependent species really sketchy. This is a table from the code of practice or the logging rules, and it's right in plain sight. Regardless of the greater glider protection measures and all the other things that they say and do, you can see on the left that the number of habitat trees available per hectare can decrease to 0, which effectively means you can still log the forestry management units at 40 centimetres of diameter where there are 0 live hollow-bearing trees. And the recruitment trees that they might leave, I honestly can't see how they could ever develop hollows because they will be cut out in the next rotation of logging within 25 or 30 years when they come back. But the campaign, and as I said at the time, we had a fairly sympathetic Environment Minister, and Nikki and myself were able to attend a really surprisingly well-attended meeting with the heads of the departments to talk about Deongwar, and ultimately that resulted in the DAF sales manager, senior forester, and Dr. Teresa Eyre from the herbarium going up to visit Deongwar, and be interesting to have heard the conversation they had up there. But we've been raising awareness of Deongwar and the BioBlitz. This was 2024, Haley? This one, wasn't it? Yeah. And that was great. The BioBlitz is an excellent way to get people engaged with a place. You get together, have a lot of interesting conversations, and you also get to spend 4 or 5 hours in small groups going through around the forest. And yeah, this is great. You know, like, it's a fair bit of work to organise it, but it's really well worth it. And I've enjoyed both of them. There's been a BioBlitz. Haley and QCC set up a BioBlitz in 2022. We had one in 2024, and we had one in 25. And all that data has been pushed through to WildNet. Unfortunately, I'm still yet to see any evidence that any of that data has been ingested into the WildNet platform. So that's a bit of an issue. But on that 2025 BioBlitz, we actually, Paul Reevy from Queensland Wildlife Preservation Society and Jessica Lovegrove Walsh from Friends of Parks Queensland, who had already done a full day of field surveys, came out, excuse me, and they turned up about 6 o'clock. And we went out, we chose a location, we thought about where we were most likely to find a greater glider, and that was actually the roadside verge, because it's been spared the axe over more recent history. And we actually took a small group of about 8 people out there, and we actually found a greater glider, which was incredibly unexpected. Haley was there. It was my first sighting of a greater glider, and I believe it was Haley's as well. And it was a really special moment. Unfortunately, Paul Reevy and Jess knew exactly what they were doing, and they were able to capture the photo. And that resulted in some really good media. It was actually published in The Guardian, Australian, quite a good article about the discovery of the greater glider. And Jessica also presented a news article on ABC about it too. This is just data for WildNet. We can move on from that. But yeah, the greater glider is fantastic. I don't bang on about koalas too much because there's already they're getting a lot of attention, a lot of funding, a lot of work being done there. But what's really significant is where are yellow-bellied gliders? They're probably one of the most significant indicators of forest health. And I suggest if they're not there, then there's probably something has gone wrong, because the forest should be alive at night with the primal cowling and scowling of these little critters. And I'm still yet to see one. I'm still yet to hear one. So it's on my bucket list. This is an image or an observation that Sasha Bruin, who attended our 2025 BioBlitz, made. And it's a snail, but it's a Moreton Bay woodland snail. And like a lot of other species that were recorded during the BioBlitzes, had never been recorded in Deongwar before. So there's always something new to find. This is I'm just flipping through, rounding out with a bit of citizen science stuff. And this bird was in the tree out my back veranda, and I couldn't see it. I just ripped off a photo, cropped it out, and I thought, okay, you got a purple magenta eye on a bird. And I thought, how are you going to identify that? Like, no clue what it is. So I just Googled it. I just asked Google, what Australian native bird has magenta eye? And it came back and suggested a satin bowerbird. And I thought, well, I don't know how that can be right, because this one's not black. And it turns out that it's actually a female, because they've got the more model coat. Wow, this is really intense, isn't it? This is interesting. And I could just pause here for a sec, Haley. This is I've been working on INAT with citizen science for a while, and I'm really digging it. I'm really learning a lot. But I was just out actually weeding around my fence line one morning. I saw this quite impressive mushroom. So I ducked in and got my iPhone, and I took some photos of it from the top, from the side, and from the stem, and put it up on INAT. And then I started someone came in and started commenting and going, oh, wow, that's amazing. It's actually a silky rosegill. And it turned out that I was actually the first person in Australia to get a verified observation of this mushroom. And I was on the moon. I thought, this is amazing. Like, I've actually discovered something fresh and new right here in my backyard. And but I think that the reason I put that up there is not to talk myself up, because I'm a goose with a camera anyway, but it's just the fact that you can find things right in your backyard that are really significant. This is Mitchell Roberts, videographer and photographer, who came up to Deongwar, and I just ripped off this photo when he was up there in quite a nice patch of more mature eucalypt, and that's actually not far from where he found the greater glider. But yeah, that's about it for me. But the thing is, it's really just about getting people out in the community, and I think we all have a deep need to connect with deep time, to connect with our space and time in the landscape. And that's what these forests potentially do for us. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Max. And also thank you so much for all your incredible work to save both Ferny Forest and Deongwar. We couldn't, it's having people like you on the ground prepared to work with community to protect these areas, which makes such the difference, exactly what we need. So I'll just sort of reiterate a couple of things that Matt started with. So in terms of what we're doing here is we're talking about the Southeast Queensland State Forests and what comes next. So logging has now ended in the state forest in Southeast Queensland. So we're talking about what happens next. So some of those areas have been penciled in for protection, which is great. And there's also a couple of about 20,000 hectares that we're waiting to find out what happens next with them. And we're not sure where that, exactly sure which state forests are likely to be protected yet. So there's a bit of work really to do to really push the state government on this to make sure that they follow through with what they've committed to, but also continue to protect more of Queensland. So I'll just get, I think Nikki's got it open. So there's, as Matt mentioned, there's a few things that you can do to show your support and get more involved. Chances are most of you are doing amazing things for nature already. But if you want to volunteer with QCC, we'll happily have you to help get out a stall to talk to people about the campaign. If you've got a local bushwalking club or bike riding club that you're keen to have a chat to about this campaign to get them to support, please do, and we're happy to support you on that. We're running a outreach training in a couple of weeks' time, face-to-face, but we're open to online training as well, as an opportunity for people to meet others who want to get more involved with this campaign and sort of run through the basics of how to talk about the campaign and what sort of tactics we use to get more support as well. And then also there's the petition, which we're always happy for more people to sign and share it with your people. We've got a few minutes for questions. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask for any of the speakers or about the campaign? Feel free to put it in the chat if you've got any questions. I'll just see if there's anything that's already come up. All good. Well, what we'll do is we'll send some follow-up information to you all as well. And feel free to get back to us over that email if any other questions come up as well. And yeah, we'll share you with all the information about all the great things that our speakers have shared and talked about tonight as well. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Particularly thank you for Brian and Teresa and Max and Matt and Nikki for having a chat with us tonight and sharing your experience. And as the theme is tonight, has been very much about connection to nature and the opportunity we have to increase further opportunities for people to connect with nature by protecting more of Queensland. So yeah, thank you so much everybody for coming and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.